People in that compound didn't need radio to hear gossip. Every whisper traveled faster than harmattan breeze. And that morning, even the sun paused, listening. It started quietly. A scream, short like someone gasped after seeing a ghost. Then slippers running across corridor tiles. The woman who sold onions and pepper in front of the gate was the first to shout. Jesu! Come and see disgrace, oh! Windows flung open. Heads peeped. Eyes widened. By the time Madame Rosemary stormed into the compound, wrapper flapping like she just escaped from a fight, everybody already knew something was wrong, but not this wrong. There he was. Obinna. Half-naked. Shirtless. Trousers halfway on. Confused. Right behind him, Ngozi, the neighbor's daughter, barely 20, hiding her face, trying to wrap herself with her mother's ankara like it would swallow her shame. Obinna, so this is what you've been doing, en? Madame Rosemary's voice rose like police siren. After all I did for you. I gave you food. I gave you roof. I even told my brother about you so he could help you get that warehouse job. Silence spread like hot oil. Obinna's lips moved, but no words came. Maybe he wanted to say, it's not what it looks like. Maybe he wanted to run. But his feet, like his shame, stayed rooted. Someone coughed. Someone else laughed. Old man Ikenna, who hadn't spoken a full sentence since Nipa took light 2 years ago, muttered, "Na-wa." The girl's mother, Mrs. Doris, came out next. Her face tight, lips trembling. She didn't scream. She didn't curse. She only looked at her daughter, then at Obinna and said, "Inside." Ngozi walked in, like someone heading for a burial. Hers. Obinna stood there, surrounded. The crowd grew. The judgment came, free of charge. Men shook heads. Women hissed. One woman with curlers in her hair said, "These boys nowadays, no shame." The compound had seen things. But not like this. Not from Obinna. The same Obinna that prayed loudest during morning devotion. The one who swept the corridor every Saturday. What happened? What led to this? Nobody knew yet. But they would find out. Oh, they would. Because in that compound, stories didn't just fly, they grew wings. And Obinna's own just began. That same day, whispers became stories, and stories became judgment. The sun hadn't even reached the center of the sky, yet Obinna's name had been chewed in every mouth like fresh coconut. Madame Rosemary locked her door with a loud clack and threw the key somewhere only she knew. Obinna stood outside, carrying the shame like a sack of rice. His clothes were now fully on, but dignity? That one had packed and left before sunrise. Auntie Bola from room 3 passed by and gave him that long, sideways glance. "You look like a child of God, but behave like goat," she hissed, not waiting for a reply. Obinna walked to the water tank, splashed his face, and sat on the pavement. Quiet. Breathing like someone who had run through fire. He didn't plan it this way. Ngozi wasn't just some girl. They had been talking for months, soft whispers in the corridor, passing notes when no one was looking. Her laughter had become his peace, and her eyes. They made him forget he was just a squatter in someone's boys' quarters. But he knew the lines. Knew the danger. Ngozi's mother was no friend to Madame Rosemary, and Madame Rosemary already had one eye on him like she didn't trust his shadow. Still, they risked it. Last night, while the compound snored and generators hummed, Ngozi had tiptoed into the boys' quarters. They had whispered, kissed, and made promises they didn't fully understand. Then dawn came. And with it, war. Inside the main house, Madame Rosemary was pacing. Her brother had called that morning to say the warehouse job was ready. She was supposed to take Obinna for the final interview that afternoon. She had even ironed his only good shirt. Now what? Take a boy who sneaked around with people's daughters? Never. She grabbed the shirt, opened the window, and flung it out like cursed cloth. It landed beside him. Obinna didn't even flinch. Just then, a soft voice called from above. Obinna. He looked up. It was Ngozi. Face puffy, lips pressed together like she'd been crying. But still, she said it again. Obinna. He stood slowly. And everything stopped, for just a second. The voice hung in the air, light but heavy. Obinna didn't respond immediately. He looked up at her, eyes meeting like two children caught in the act, wondering what to say after the damage had been done. Ngozi's fingers held the iron window bars. Her lips trembled as if every word she wanted to say was still fighting to be let out. But her mother's voice boomed from inside before anything else could happen. Ngozi, close that window. She flinched and disappeared like a ghost chased by daylight. Obinna stared a few seconds more, then sat back down. From across the compound, two little boys pretended to reenact the morning scandal. One tied a scarf around his waist and screamed, Yezu! Obinna, so this is what you've been doing. The other rolled on the floor, laughing. Even children knew. Obinna stood up, dusted his trousers, and walked out of the compound gate. He needed space. Maybe some air. Maybe just to disappear. He passed by Mama Nduka's stall, where she sold akara and pap. She eyed him, shook her head, and turned back to frying. No words. Just judgment coated in hot oil and silence. As he reached the main road, someone tapped him from behind. It was Mr. Charles, the quiet man from room 7. Always wore a cap. Never said much. He looked at Obinna, then handed him a black nylon bag. You'll need this, he said, voice low. Inside was bread, sardine, and a sachet of water. Obinna blinked, confused. Why? Mr. Charles nodded slowly. Because shame doesn't fill stomach. Eat. Then think. And just like that, he walked away. Obinna sat under a mango tree by the junction and opened the bag. The bread was soft. The sardine cold. But it tasted like a reminder that he was still human, still breathing. He stared at the cars passing, wondering if he should keep walking until his legs gave up. But something in him wouldn't let go. Something said, face it. Finish it. Because running never cleaned a stain. It only gave it more room to spread. So, he stood up, wiped his mouth, and headed back toward the compound. This story was not going to end on the pavement. By the time Obinna returned, the compound had calmed down, but only on the surface. Inside every room, the story was still boiling, bubbling under gas stoves and cooking pots. He could feel it in the air. The kind of silence that wasn't peace. Just waiting for someone to open their mouth again. He passed the grinding machine near the gate, nodded at no one, and walked in through the side. The same place Ngozi had used the night before. Same footsteps, but different heart. When he reached Madame Rosemary's door, he paused. His fingers hung in the air before he knocked. Once. No answer. Twice. Still nothing. Then the door opened just a little. Her face appeared, tight like a new rubber band. Eyes full of things she didn't say. You still have leg to stand here. I just want to talk, he said, not lifting his eyes. Talk? You should be in police cell. I know. I'm sorry. She opened the door fully and walked in. He followed. The room still smelled like polish and powder. Her big Bible sat open on the table beside a half-empty tin of balm. She didn't sit. Just folded her arms and stood by the curtain. You love her. Obinna blinked. Ma. You heard me. I think I do. She scoffed. You think. Or you do. He nodded. I do. She walked slowly to the window, looked out for a second, then turned back. You know what you've done cannot be undone, right? Even if you marry her tomorrow, people won't forget. I know, he said. You're not the first boy I've tried to help. But you may be the last. He didn't argue. No excuses. Just silence. She picked up the shirt she had ironed earlier, the same one she flung outside in anger. It was clean again, folded on the stool. She handed it to him. Your interview is at 3 p.m. If you like, go and sleep again with someone's daughter. But if you miss it, don't come back here. He took the shirt carefully, like it was made of glass. And for the first time that day, his fingers stopped shaking. Somehow, that hurt more than the shouting. Obinna didn't even go back to his corner to sit. He just walked to the public tap, poured water into a bowl, and began to wash his face and hands, like he was trying to scrub shame off his skin. His ears still echoed Madame Rosemary's words, "If you miss it, don't come back." He looked up at the sky. No clouds, no breeze. Just sun hanging there, hot and heartless. Inside the compound, the tension had shifted. Now people were whispering quieter. The noise had turned into curiosity. From the way he walked to the tap, to how he dried his hands with the bottom of his shirt, every movement had an audience. From the balcony, Auntie Bola whispered to another woman, "You see the way she still gave him the shirt? That boy get lucky." Another woman go throw em inside soak away. Someone chuckled, but Obinna didn't even look up. He walked back to the boys' quarters, locked the door behind him, and changed into the shirt. It was clean, white, slightly tight on the shoulders, but he wore it like armor. Then he brought out the only trousers he had without patches and slipped into them. He cleaned his sandals with water and one old rag he had kept for years. When he looked at himself in the cracked mirror nailed to the wall, he didn't see a man going for an interview. He saw a boy pretending to be a man. A knock came on the door. 3 short taps. He opened it. Ngozi. She stood there, eyes red but determined. She didn't come to cry or beg. She came to speak. Are you going? He nodded. Yes. Good, she said, voice flat. I didn't plan for any of this to happen, he said quietly. I know. But it did. They stared at each other. 2 young people who had played with fire and gotten burned in places words couldn't reach. She shifted her feet. Whatever happens next, just make sure you don't waste that chance. I won't. She nodded once, turned, and walked away. No hug, no tears, no promises. Just a moment. One that carried more weight than the morning's shame. Obinna stepped out into the street. It was time. The road to the warehouse was long and hot. Obinna took a bus part of the way, then trekked the rest, his shirt sticking to his back like guilt. He didn't care. His mind wasn't on sweat. It was on the questions that might come, the eyes that would judge, the chance he might miss. When he got to the warehouse gate, 2 men were arguing over a delivery delay. He stood quietly, holding his brown envelope like it had answers inside. One of the guards looked at him and asked, You dey find who? I'm here for interview, he said, voice calm. The guard looked him up and down. Name? Obinna Okeke. The man checked a list, nodded, and pointed. Go inside. Last office by the right. Obinna walked past the rows of crates and loud machines. The warehouse smelled of sweat, engine oil, and hard work. He liked it. Inside the office, 2 men were already seated. One wore a short-sleeved shirt with a pen tucked behind his ear. The other had a face like he'd heard every excuse in life and wasn't interested in one more. You're late, the penierman said. Obinna nodded. Yes, sir. I came from Mushin. They said nothing. Have a seat. He sat, trying not to fidget. Why do you want this job? The question came sharp, without warning. I need to work, Obinna said. I don't have family here. I've been managing, but I want to earn my own money and stop depending on others. The man nodded slowly. The second man asked, "Can you lift 50 kg? Yes, sir. Every day. If I have to." They exchanged looks. "You know this work is hard." "Yes, sir. People complain. People quit. We need men who won't run when things get rough." Obinna smiled faintly. "I've lived rough. This one will feel like holiday." They both stared at him. Then the first man picked up a form and slid it across the table. "Fill this. If your reference checks out, you start Monday." Obinna took the pen. His hand shook only slightly. Outside, the sun hadn't cooled down, but something inside him had. He didn't know if they'd call him back. But for the first time in weeks, he felt seen. By the time Obinna returned to the compound, the sun had started packing up for the day. Evening shadows stretched across the corridor, and cooking smells filled the air. Beans from one room, boiling yam from another. But the chatter was still there. His name still floated from mouth to mouth, even though nobody said it to his face. He walked in quietly, envelope in hand, shirt rumpled, sweat marks under his arms. His eyes met a few others. Some looked away. Others kept staring. But he didn't pause. He went straight to his corner, unlocked the door, stepped in, and dropped the file gently on the table. Then he sat. Back straight. Eyes forward. There was a soft knock. He opened it. Mr. Charles again. The same man with the bread and sardine. "You get the job." "Not yet," Obinna said. "They said I should wait for call." Mr. Charles nodded. "Na so day start." He brought out a small sachet of groundnut from his pocket and dropped it on the table. "Chop. Energy go soon become your best friend." Obinna smiled faintly. "Thank you, sir." "You go day all right," the man said, then left like breeze. Minutes later, as the compound sank into quietness, Madame Rosemary returned. This time she didn't speak. She just passed him in the corridor with 2 loaves of bread and a nylon bag from the market. She didn't even look at him. But he noticed she paused slightly before unlocking her door, just enough to show she knew he was watching. That night, while the other tenants were busy with buckets and generators, Obinna sat outside, staring at the stars. Ngozi didn't come out. Her window stayed closed. Still, Obinna sat there, calm. He had no phone to check. No friend to gist with. But he had something else. Peace. The kind that comes after chaos, when your heart stops running. He stood, stretched, and walked back into his room. Behind him, a curtain shifted slightly. Just slightly. The next morning, Obinna woke up before the cocks could even clear their throat. He boiled water, brushed his teeth outside like every other tenant, and swept the corridor silently. It wasn't assigned to him. He just did it. People noticed. Nobody said anything. But they noticed. By 7, Madame Rosemary opened her door, wearing her scarf and wrapper, holding a bowl of rice. She saw the swept corridor and paused for a second, then carried on. By 8, Obinna was dressed in his usual shirt and trousers, sitting by the edge of the pavement with his envelope close, just in case the warehouse called. He didn't have a phone, but Mr. Charles had promised to listen for him. So, he waited. Ngozi came out that morning. First time since everything. She wore a long t-shirt and carried a bucket. Her eyes met his, briefly, and she kept walking. No words. He didn't expect any. But just before she reached the tap, her bucket slipped and fell. Water splashed everywhere. Some girls standing nearby laughed. Obinna stood, walked over, picked up the bucket, and held it steady while she tried to open the tap again. "Thank you," she said, without looking at him. He nodded. "You're welcome." It was a small thing. A tiny spark. But in a place where people loved fire, even small sparks could lead somewhere. Later that day, while he was helping Madame Rosemary carry a basin of Gary upstairs, Mr. Charles called out, "Obinna!" They called O. Obinna dropped the basin fast, nearly stumbling, and rushed down. Mr. Charles handed him a small note with a number scribbled on it. "They said you should come tomorrow morning. Bring ID and start work clothes." Obinna froze. "I got it." Mr. Charles nodded. "You go start Monday, but tomorrow na your test run." Obinna sat down right there on the steps. He didn't speak. His eyes glistened like he had just run through rain. From a few windows, people watched. This time, no insults. Just silent acceptance. Madame Rosemary came out again, arms folded. "Better Don come. Don't mess it up." "I won't," he said softly. And this time, his voice didn't shake. Sunday came with its usual noise, early morning prayers, someone frying puff-puff, radios shouting sermons from different corners. Obinna was up before most, sitting on the steps, legs stretched, watching ants crawl across the floor. He looked calm, but his mind was busy. Tomorrow, he would start work. No more roaming. No more shame tied to another person's kindness. Just before 8 a.m., Madame Rosemary walked past him in a lace gown and gelly, ready for church. She looked down at him and said, "Wear something clean today. First impression matters." He stood. "Yes, Ma." "And shine your shoes." "Yes, Ma." She didn't smile. But she didn't frown either. Maybe that was her version of approval. He returned to his room, cleaned his black sandals until they looked new, brought out his shirt and ironed it with an old pressing iron someone lent him. As he worked, Ngozi's knock came, gentle and unsure. He opened the door slowly. She stood there, holding a nylon bag. "Take," she said, eyes on the floor. "For lunch. Tomorrow." He looked inside, rice, beans, and stew wrapped in a small plastic container. "You didn't have to." "I know. I just wanted to." Silence. "I wish we could start over," she said suddenly. "We can't," he replied. "But we can grow from it." She nodded. "Good. That's something." Then she left. No tears. No lingering glances. Just that simple exchange that said, "We've learned something." That evening, the compound felt different. Lighter. As if a storm had passed, and now everyone could hang their clothes without fear of rain. Even the woman with curlers who once mocked Obinna now asked, "You don't get where you go day work, abi?" He nodded, smiling. "Yes, Ma." "E good. No carry girls go there oh." "I won't." "Better." She walked away, slippers slapping against the concrete. Inside his room, Obinna sat on his small bed and looked at the food Ngozi brought. He didn't eat it yet. He just smiled at it like a memory that didn't hurt anymore. Tomorrow was coming. And for the first time in a long time, he felt ready. Monday morning smelled like soap, hot water, and nervousness. Obinna woke before his alarm, though he had none. The body knows when something new is about to begin. He bathed quickly, wore his clean shirt, combed his hair with the plastic comb he had borrowed, and stepped outside. Mr. Charles was already waiting with a smile, holding his cap as usual. "You ready?" he asked. Obinna nodded. "I've been ready since yesterday night." They walked together to the main road, avoiding puddles from last night's rain. The sun hadn't fully woken up yet, but Lagos had. Buses groaned past. Sellers shouted. Life moved. At the bus stop, Mr. Charles gave him a folded paper. "That's my cousin's number. If anything happens at work, call him. He used to be a foreman there." Obinna collected it carefully. "Thank you." And don't form. Just work. Let them see you before they hear you. Yes, sir. They shook hands like men, firm, respectful. By 7:30 a.m., Obinna was standing at the gate of the warehouse. This time, he didn't look around nervously. He walked in like someone who had earned his place. The supervisor saw him and waved. Follow me. They passed rows of crates, tools, shouting workers. Obinna kept his mouth shut and his ears open. At one point, a heavy sack fell off a trolley. Others moved back. Obinna rushed forward, lifted it alone, and placed it back. The supervisor raised his brow. Strong. I try small, Obinna said, smiling. By afternoon, he had blisters on his palms and sweat soaking his shirt. But he didn't stop. Even during break, he remained on his feet, helping others, learning, watching. Back at the compound, Madame Rosemary stood at the corridor with Ngozi beside her. They both waited. Not that they said they were waiting, but they were. At exactly 5:45 p.m., Obinna walked in, tired but standing tall. His shirt was dusty. His eyes, proud. Ngozi smiled first. Then her mother, just a small curve of the lips. Welcome, Madame Rosemary said. Thank you, Ma. You still go tomorrow. He chuckled. Unless I die tonight. She laughed, short and sharp. Go and bath. You smell like trailer work. Obinna bowed slightly. Yes, Ma. The days rolled into each other like waves at Bar Beach. Obinna kept showing up. Rain or shine, pain or peace. He didn't complain, didn't ask questions, didn't slow down. Every morning, he left with his shirt tucked in. Every evening, he returned with it soaked and untucked. At first, the compound watched in silence. But soon, whispers began to travel. Na that boy way day follow Madame Rosemary daughter. Him day trio. I no go lie. One evening, Baba Chaik called him over. The old man was sitting on a plastic chair, holding his transistor radio. You no go rest small? I rest when I reach heaven, sir, Obinna said, grinning. The old man chuckled. You get sense. Inside the house, Madame Rosemary had started leaving food for him. She wouldn't say it was for him, of course. She'd just point and say, Ngozi, that rice, put him there, and walk away. But Obinna always knew. And he always said thank you, Ma loud enough. One night, he sat outside under the mango tree. The moon was hiding, but stars were everywhere. Ngozi joined him, bringing 2 oranges. Here. For vitamin C, she said, dropping one on his lap. You don't trust my immune system. I trust you. But Lagos doesn't. They peeled in silence, the only noise being the pop of fruit skin and far-off sounds of a generator humming like a tired giant. Then she said, My mum never laughs like that before. Obinna looked at her. Maybe she forgot how to. And you reminded her? He shrugged. I just do my own. She smiled, soft and steady. I like the way you do your own. He didn't say anything back. But his face told the story. Behind the curtain, Madame Rosemary watched through a small tear. She didn't smile. But her hand rested gently on her chest like someone remembering something warm after years of cold. The compound was quiet, but not empty. A few neighbors peeked from windows. Children played with bottle covers. Somewhere, a cat knocked over a basin. But under the mango tree, 2 people sat, not as neighbors anymore, but something more. Sunday came like it always did, slow, with the smell of fried plantain in the air and radio voices echoing across compounds. But this one felt different. Something in the air had shifted. Obinna had just swept the compound when he heard the knock, 3 hard bangs on the gate. Before he could reach it, the gate burst open. It was Ngozi's father. He had returned. He wore a faded shirt tucked into clean trousers, but his eyes were sharp, burning like petrol set to fire. Behind him, a woman, light-skinned, heavy makeup, stood with arms folded and face tight like a drum. Madame Rosemary stepped out of the house slowly, her wrapper dragging against the floor. "Ah! You remembered you had a home," she said, voice steady. "You let that thing live here. That useless boy," he shouted, pointing at Obinna. Ngozi rushed out. "Daddy, don't do this." He turned to her like he had just remembered she existed. You disgrace me. Sleeping with that boy in this house." The compound fell silent. People froze. Buckets in hand, mouths open. Obinna stood still. Not from fear, but from the weight of it all. Madame Rosemary moved in front of him. "Don't you ever raise your voice in this house again." He laughed bitterly. "You're defending him. Over your own husband." "You're not my husband. You're just a man who left when things got tough." Ngozi's voice shook. "And you think you can walk in and fix things with shouting?" The woman beside him whispered, "Let's go. These people don't fear you anymore." And just like that, they left. The gate didn't slam. It sighed. Madame Rosemary turned to Obinna. "You can go rest now. You've done enough." But he didn't move. Ngozi reached for his hand. He held it. No more hiding. No more shame. People started to whisper again, but this time, it wasn't with malice. It was the sound of something new, something tender growing in a cracked place. And as the sun pushed through the clouds, warming the broken tiles and dusty walls, the compound breathed easy, for the first time in a long time.